Yes, I can try. I think that the whole question of moral education at younger ages or higher education is a difficult one that people have struggled with. But I think that it's important to begin with a recognition that at any level are continually thinking about moral issues in their personal lives, what happens at the university, and you're talking about university level, right? What happens in their society, politics, questions of equality and justice and racial discrimination. And to begin by understanding that they are always thinking about these matters. This is not the only thing they think about, of course. And that the best way to start bringing it into the curriculum is to talk to students about their concerns and interests, and then engage them in conversations about this and have them converse with each other about what are some of the central moral issues that are part of your society, and what are some of the central issues that are part of the world as well, which most people think about. They read the news or get it on the internet now more than read the news. And I'm not sure that it's necessarily a good idea to have classes or courses that are aimed at improving or developing their morality, but rather to maybe identify courses and where this could be done to a greater or lesser extent. Now maybe if it's a mathematics course, you could do it to a very small extent. If it's a course in philosophy, or there are courses in philosophy which discuss ethics, and that could be designed to have more of this kind of discussion as well. Courses in the humanities and social sciences could be designed to, as opposed to having a course on developing their morality, some relevant courses could be designed, if the people who are teaching them are willing, to include more of those kinds of discussions. And then there's always the possibility of trying to engage students in activities in the university that have to do with moral issues. I don't know to what extent that occurs here. Well, I would say that from my point of view, the best way to do that is to discuss and be concerned with tolerance and acceptance of different cultural perspectives, but and many things that could be done, but discussions around the problems that people face who are not part of the majority culture. But at the same time, I think it's important to also include discussion of some of the difficult moral issues and conflicts that are raised, not by multiculturalism, but that are raised within, that may occur within any of these different cultures. And I think some of the issues that come up, which maybe have to do with customs and conventions, are ones that should be discussed in terms of diversity, variety, accepting different perspectives on those issues. But I also think it'd be very useful and important to discuss the ways in which any culture embodies unfairness and inequalities, particularly in some cultures with regard to male-female relationships. In other cultures, it may be caste relationships, something you know a lot about, social class and racial differences. So it means, and it's a difficult thing to do, it means confronting the idea that everything a culture practices isn't necessarily morally correct. Not that the culture is morally wrong, but that some of its practices may be, and that you can find practices of that sort in any culture. Right? And that would involve trying to talk about the idea that there are both legit commonalities across cultures in the way they think about morality, but also differences in the way they may apply some of these moral judgments, like to relationships between those in dominant and subordinate positions, and to also point to and talk about differences, not only differences between cultures, but the differences that exist within a culture. So there are differences in perspectives of males and females if the culture is more patriarchal. There are certainly differences in the perspectives of those who are higher in the socioeconomic hierarchy and those who are lower, or the social class hierarchies. And there are a lot of differences there within a culture. And those should be discussed. Yeah, well, that's a difficult problem, but an important one. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of the things we've talked about, which is recognizing those goals that are more educational, more institutional, because there are certain things that are needed for the institution to operate properly, and those that are moral. So it's again making distinctions among different spheres of life, but in this case, university life, and even talking about weighing one against the other. You may gain something educationally and lose something morally by the way the institution is structured. And I think all that should be part of the discussion. I think that administrators, now I don't know what the situation is here. I do know that in the United States and even in Berkeley, which has a long history of political activity, that administrators are often, these are people in the higher administration who were faculty before they're part of the of academia. But in their positions, they really tend to not be sufficiently sensitive to some of the concerns that students bring up, such as when there are demonstrations and protests. And I don't know if you have the same kind of thing here, but I think that there should be a lot more dialogue, not only with students, but between administrators and faculty about all these kinds of issues, and both with regard to reacting to student demands and demonstrations, but also more generally on how to establish these relationships so that justice and fairness are at the forefront of what everybody's thinking about.